I would just like to say that I am looking forward to Christmas this year. The Christmas trees, the twinkling lights, the palm trees, the cactus. Yeah, winter came far too early for me this year. This public service announcement on wildlife management pertains mostly to my family. Do you remember, family, when I went to the little wooded area behind our family campsite, and I took the machete and carved a trail, blazed a trail back into a cluster of small trees where it was all real wooded, and I said, this will let the little kids have a chance to play Daniel Boone. Do you remember when I said that, I also said, but don't let them play out there by themselves. We need an adult just in case a coyote wants to come up and catch them. Do you remember everybody thinking I was exaggerating? Well, after our camping trip, I stuck a trail cam out there in the little kids' play area, and I want you to see the video right now. And then back to our regularly scheduled devotion. I don't know where that squirrel got that corn. The nearest cornfield was probably a mile or more away. All I've got to say about this is, that is one brave mouse. And where there's rabbits, there's coyotes. There are no houses nearby. I don't know where that cat came from. Must be feral. Hannah Whittle-Smith was an exceptional person, an exceptional speaker in the holiness movement. She was raised, her background spiritually was Quaker. She was influenced by the Methodist revivals at the end of the 19th century, beginning of the 20th century. She was a strong speaker, not only in the holiness movement, but for women's suffrage and also the temperance movement. All these movements she stood strong on. But most of all, or much of what we know her about today, comes from pain. She lost several children. I can't remember, I think 4 children while they were still young. Her husband fell to moral failure and caused a sex scandal that brought a black eye on the whole family, especially a family of speakers in the holiness movement. She had crippling arthritis that affected her most of her life. And yet she hit it head on and wrote about pain. Probably her greatest book is the one called A Christian's Secret to a Happy Life. In this book, she talks about a vision that she had. And in her vision, there was a great bubble around her of God's grace and God's protection. And all around the outside of that bubble were arrows that were being shot at her from the world around and from the evil one. And as the arrows came, they bounced off of that bubble of protection that God had made. And she noticed that although some of the arrows made it through, the only arrows that made it through that bubble of protection were the ones where God released the grace just a little bit and made a little window for an arrow to come through. And whenever God did that, he had a reason, or he had a purpose, or else he made something out of it, or he gave her the strength to get through it. And so she realized that although life is full of pain, hers especially, and deep hurt, that God is greater. Now, I know that a lot of her writings are controversial. And some of you will see this as an enlightened view, and others of you will see this as a terrible view, the idea that God allows pain or that God brings in pain into our lives. And I'm going to go there another day, perhaps, not today. There are still some things that I find very valuable in what Hannah Whittle-Smith is saying. One thing I find is that people suffer. She suffers, you suffer, the people around us suffer. I've grown to believe over my many decades in ministry and times I've spent with people that just about everybody suffers. The only difference between those that suffer and those that don't suffer or don't appear to suffer is that some sufferings are more visible while others are more hidden, and so we don't notice them quite the same. The second thing that I find useful in this vision that she has is that not only does everyone suffer, but it's not always your fault. Sometimes things just happen. Sometimes suffering just comes our way. Sometimes the arrows hit us and there's no way we could have dodged them, and there's no way we could have stopped it from coming, and it's not always our fault. Okay, here's idea number 3. First, everybody suffers. Second, it's not always our fault. We can't always escape it. Sometimes it just happens. The third, God's bigger than the suffering. God cares about us, and his grace can maybe someday make something good come out of it. Maybe, as the atheist Nietzsche said, whatever doesn't kill me makes me stronger, makes something good come out of us because of it. Maybe just an intimacy of God walking with, like Hannah, through her life, through the suffering. I don't know. That's beyond my intelligence level, but I know that God is bigger than the suffering, and we aren't. That leaves me with maybe the most important idea, and that is, since everybody's going to suffer, you are and I am, since the suffering may or may not have anything to do with anything we've done, and we might not be able to escape it, since God is bigger than the suffering, it's important for us to live close to God. It's important for us to live wisely. But it's also important for us to know that no amount of worrying is going to make any difference. We can kill ourselves worrying about things that may or may not happen that are outside of our control. One place I see this today, and I tell you, it just sort of hurts my heart, is politics. We talk often about the fighting in America, and red states and blue states, and those that are liberal and those that are conservative, and those that are MAGA and those that are progressive. And we talk about those things. We talk about different viruses. We talk about the economy. We talk about ecology. We talk about all sorts of things, most of which we have absolutely no control over. And I think the arguing and fighting, I listened carefully to some of this. And some of the arguing and fighting and back and forth, and some of what you read on Facebook comes out of an almost sheer panic about the state of affairs. The state of affairs are what they are. We do need to live wisely. We do need to make the best decisions we can. We do need to vote. We need to do those things. But we don't need to panic. Another area where people fear is the future of the church. I don't know how many people I've heard or how many websites get on Facebook nowadays and proclaim the death of the church, the decline of Christianity. And there's no doubt that there has been a weakening. But if the church is not the church of God, let it die. If the church is the church of God, you can pressure it, persecute it, stomp on it, but you can't shut her down. I'm betting the church is the church of God. It's the middle of another week. In a few days we come to worship our Lord together again. May God bless you and strengthen you and give you calm in the midst of the storms of your life.